What TV shows can teach you about project stakeholder management? Find out in this episode. Welcome to the second episode of PM Coffee Talk with your host Rahila Vayani. This episode will help you understand how to manage stakeholders effectively. This episode entails why stakeholder management is so important, how to perform a stakeholder analysis, and how to devise an effective plan for communicating with your stakeholders. By the end of this episode, you will know how to manage your stakeholders and keep them engaged throughout your project program. So let's jump right in. The viewers call The Mentalist a hit. What is The Mentalist, you might ask? The Mentalist is an American drama television series that ran from September 23, 2008 till February 18, 2015. 151 episodes over 7 seasons on CBS. The show tells the story of Patrick Jane, an independent consultant with the California Bureau of Investigation, CBI. Jane has a remarkable track record for solving serious crimes by using his razor-sharp skills of observation. He also makes frequent use of his mentalist abilities to lead witnesses into offering the facts of the case, as known only to them. His team loves him for solving high-profile cases quickly. So you ask, what does this crime thriller have to do with the stakeholder management? I will get to it, but let us first grab some tea, as Jane would say. Stakeholder management is all about effective communication. Once you know who your stakeholders are and what sort of position they hold in terms of helping you to achieve your goal, your primary responsibility is to keep in contact with them at a pace and to a degree that is appropriate for them. By using a stakeholder communication plan, you can effectively manage relationships with people who have the power and influence to make or break your plans. This takes a bit of upfront planning and preparation. But there is significant value in knowing who your stakeholders are and the specific role each will play in your success, and in having a plan to communicate with them. This will ensure you maximize their support along the way. The Mentalist made its debut in late September to an impressive 15.5 million viewers, consistently beating other TV dramas and maintaining viewership throughout its tenure. The Mentalist has all the things that make a good TV show: suspense, comedy, wittiness, romance, unforgettable characters, an amazing overall plot, and just enough drama. Remember, key stakeholders can make or break a project. If the deliverables don't fulfill key stakeholders' expectations, your project is sunk, even if you finish on time and under budget. In the Mentalist case, the most important stakeholders were the viewers. They loved the show and wanted to see more and more of it. The Mentalist was rated as a hit by 97% audience, reported by some sources. The stakeholder management process has 3 parts. Part 1 comprises of a 3-step approach. Part 1, a 3-step process to identify, prioritize, and categorize your stakeholders. This framework that I'm using is from Mind Tools. It's a robust model that will enable you to manage your stakeholders effectively. Part 1, Step 1, identify your stakeholders. Let's begin with some brainstorming. Here are some common stakeholders for your project program. Your project team, everyone who is helping you do your project and program. Your management team, senior executives, marketing, finance, communications, legal, IT, co-workers, future employees, current and prospective customers, family members maybe, shareholders, partners, suppliers, government, lenders, trade associations, media, interest groups, the public, the community. Also ask some questions to identify your stakeholders. Who will be affected by your project or change? Who will you consult before you start implementing your project program? Who can influence the result? What external groups or organizations are affected or could affect your project? Who is interested in your project success? Who will support the change? Your action. List all your identified stakeholders based on the guidelines just discussed. For a sample sheet, go to fwpmi.org and download the grid. Part 2, Step 2. Prioritize your stakeholders. The power interest grid that you see is a useful framework for prioritizing your stakeholders. It is a framework from Mind Tools that has helped me in mapping my stakeholders based on the power of the stakeholder to affect my project objectives and their interest in doing so. Some questions to ask as you prioritize your stakeholders. Who has the power or the interest to further my project goals and objectives or to block them? The more power or interest a stakeholder has to further my project objectives or to block them, the higher you would prioritize and manage your involvement and communication with that stakeholder. Your action. Use the guidelines just discussed to prioritize all your stakeholders. Download your grid from www.fwpmi.org. Part 1, Step 3. Categorize your stakeholders. This step will give you an immediate view of who to keep in close contact and what approach to use while doing that. Use these guidelines to color code your stakeholders. Green, a stakeholder who wholeheartedly supports your work. Yellow, a stakeholder who is supportive but with some reservations. Red, somebody who is not very supportive or obstructive. Your action. Use the guidelines just discussed to color code your stakeholders in the grid provided. The stakeholder management process has 3 parts. Part 2, devising a stakeholder communications plan. This plan, as you see, has 7 key elements: names of the stakeholders, the communication approach, their key interest, status, desired action, message to convey, actions, and communications. The communications plan will show you how to expend the necessary effort effectively across your stakeholders to win their support. Let me show you how to fill up this plan. Fill in the stakeholder name from part 1. Fill in the communications approach based on where the stakeholder appears in the power interest grid that you created in part 1. Manage closely, keeping satisfied, keep informed, or monitor. Identify the key interests that each stakeholder has in your project. Why is he or she a stakeholder? What is he or she interested in? Then in the status column, based on the color coding that you performed in part 1, name the stakeholder appropriately. An advocate who is actively helping you to succeed. Advocates will have been highlighted in green on your power interest grid. A supporter who is supporting your efforts to succeed, green or yellow on your grid. A critic who doesn't support your plan, red on your grid. A blocker is trying to thwart your plan, red on your grid. Continue your action. For the desired action, identify what you want from each stakeholder, determine how much support you want, what you see their role as, and what actions you want from them. In a perfect world, what would each stakeholder do for you? Make sure that you answer this in terms of the person's capability and the influence they have. For instance, can they provide me objective opinions, help to identify ways to solve problems, provide education or training, resources, guidance, or follow directions, or influence others? For the message, figure out what message you want to send to your stakeholders to persuade them to support you in a way that you want. Essentially, this is the benefit section of a sales pitch. What will you say to persuade someone to help you? So identify what is in it for them, why they should support or help you, how they will help you or the organization, what support you are willing to provide in return, how can you appeal to their good nature or willingness to give back. Finally, fill in the actions and communications. Work out what you need to do and say to get your stakeholders' support. How will you communicate with them? How often? How will you monitor your progress? What will you do to evaluate your success? How will you convince people who aren't totally keen? How will you raise stakeholder interest? How will you keep stakeholders engaged? How will you allocate the time you spend with high power, high interest stakeholders and others? So this part of your plan requires careful consideration. For now, take one or two of your high power, high interest stakeholders who support your project and work out an action and communication strategy. The key to a good plan is balancing the need to keep in touch with your stakeholders with the need for them to not feel pressurized or imposed upon. If you start with a high level of communication, try to pick up on signals people might send out if they feel uncomfortable with this. Next, look at one stakeholder who doesn't support your project. Develop a plan to manage that person too. At the very least, you'll want to neutralize any negative impact that he or she has on your project's success. Can you think of anything you can to win their support over? Is there some way to engage them and find a benefit for them in helping or supporting you? Use the same process to fill out actions and communications for all your stakeholders. The stakeholder management process has 3 parts. Part 3, implement your plan. Your action, implement your plan. This is the final step as you put your plan into action. It may take a lot of work at first, but you will begin to see the benefits when your projects run more smoothly. After all, you'll have anticipated many of the obstacles that would otherwise have halted its progress. And remember, your plan is dynamic. Make sure that you update your approach as circumstances change. The roles that stakeholders play are bound to change as well and evolve. And the scale of their power and trust can shift too. An important aspect of the stakeholder management is to stay on top of the developments and to communicate these promptly. So don't lose touch with people. Your stakeholders will be of real benefits to you if you learn to manage your relationships with them effectively. So now your action. Implement your action plan. Back to the Mentalist. Successful TV shows are all about hooking viewers, the stakeholders, and The Mentalist did just that. Patrick Jane, the charming Australian actor, is well into his 5th season of The Mentalist and he's still popular. The series, which follows a former con artist turned investigative consultant, aired Sundays on CBS. The series co-stars include Teresa Lisbon, a senior agent with the California Bureau of Investigation (CBI), who works with Jane to crack tough cases. The cast also includes Kimball Chow, Wayne Rigsby, and Grace Van Pelt, all CBI agents. Once a well-known medium, Jane has finely tuned observational skills that allow him to piece together clues in a way that eludes Lisbon and her fellow agents, making Jane an invaluable asset to the team. The Mentalist has strung along viewers with the underlining Red John plotline for several strong seasons. So far, so good for the drama, which was a hit out of the gate with a win for a favorite new drama at the 2009 People's Choice Award. The Mentalist also earned a unique distinction when the Independent Investigations Group recognized the series with an award for scientific and critical thinking content in 2010. Leaving riveting scripts, prestigious awards, and gripping plotlines aside, the real draw of The Mentalist is Jane's performance, and he has earned his fair share of accolades for his work. His gig as Jane garnered an Emmy nomination in 2009, and he was later honored with both Golden Globe and SAG Award nomination for the role. The Mentalist is one of the best crime detective shows out there. It has an engaging storyline, and who can't relate to what Patrick Jane feels for Red John? Every episode is thrilling, engaging, and fun, keeping the Mentalist fans tuning in week after week. Check it out on Prime. It's a real treat and it will teach you a little something about how to engage and satisfy your stakeholders. Final season averages 1.3 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic with 9.28 million total viewers. Wow. To sum it up, stakeholder management process is crucial for the success of your project. First, knowing them and then meeting their expectations throughout your project life cycle. The Mentalist did just that, and so can you with the training in this video. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this YouTube video. Thumbs up to all our sources. Goodbye until episode 3.